folks, it's Miss Christine. I am excited to do Agape's snack attack for this month. I'm hoping that you guys can join me next month if you weren't able to join today. Lots of people were busy. We had a few people who requested kits, but unfortunately weren't able to come tonight. So I'm making this video for those of you who did get kits. You can do this craft, snack on your own. And then also, if you didn't get a kit, you can do this anytime you want. It has some adult parts and it has some kid parts, so it's definitely family friendly, but definitely depending on age, would not want kiddos with a knife. Okay, so the basic things you'll need other than some, quick cooking utensils are some apples, a muffin tin. You can use ramekins. I'm using a muffin tin. You're going to need dough. I got Pillsbury Doughboy dough. This is not a paid ad. JK. So it's pastry dough. You're going to need 1 egg. You're going to need some butter, and you're going to need some cinnamon sugar. You may be wondering what we're making, and I wish I could show you, but it's on my phone and I'm recording on my phone. But they are Valentine's Day roses made out of apples and puff pastries. So I imagine it's supposed to taste like apple pie. This is the first time I'm making it, but I've been doing a lot of baking since COVID started. So let's see how it goes. Some other utensils you'll need is just a plate, a kitchen towel, and some plastic wrap if you have one, a little brush, and a knife. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start the oven, preheat 400 degrees. For any of you over 30 crowd, I don't know if you guys remember Zoom, where they did like things like this. That's very much how I feel right now. Throwback. All right, and as always, we want to put back our hair if you have any, and wash our hands. Okay, now to start off, we have preheated the oven. We are going to prepare our muffin tin. You can do a couple of things. You can use Pam, the nonstick spray, but that's not what the recipe recommended. So I'm not going to do that. They actually recommended a little bit of melted butter on the inside of the pan, and then just a splash of the cinnamon sugar to crystallize on the muffin tin. I actually have no idea how many I'm going to make. I don't know how many ingredients I have. If you requested a kit, I gave 2 apples and a whole can of the dough, which I believe should make 4. It said 2 apples would make, it said 1 apple would make 2 of these. So you should be all set, but that was a lot of cinnamon sugar. But go ahead and put the butter in there and some cinnamon sugar. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and cut the apples, okay? They do need to be rather thin, so you want to do this with a knife that is very sharp. This is the part that I recommend to not be for children. If you are a person that has one of those fancy, the fancy cutters that cut for you, definitely use that. I'm not going to, because I'm going to tough it out and show you it can be done with the regular knife. All right, so I'm just going to rinse off these apples, not too much, because I believe that the dirt on apples, are a bit healthy for us. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. I wish I had a paring knife. I don't, so I'm just using a really sharp cooking knife. And you're going to cut it just like that. If you were, when you were little, we did these to do art with apples. Don't have to worry about removing the seeds and the core quite yet. And you're actually going to cut like this. The first one is not going to be pretty because you're going to get rid of it. You're going to toss that one. Okay. The rest you're going to try and cut as thin as you possibly can with the knife. Okay. I know this is why it's difficult for kiddos. You'll see how thin that is. It's a little floppy, and you're going to go ahead and cut that until your whole, that one was too thin. And I'm going to cut that until your whole apple is cut through. I personally suck at using a knife, but take your time here. I don't want anyone to rush. because you do want these to be nice and thin. Like I said, I'm going to be cutting 2 apples for my son, who's obsessed with desserts. Every time I make something, he comes home and devours it. Half the time I don't even have time to eat it myself. So I am going to make quite a few so that I can make sure there are some for everyone. It's getting a little tricky down to the last bit of the apple. So I'm going to be very careful to make sure I do not cut myself. Okay, so that was a bit thick. So I think that this is going to be another toss away. I'm on the second half of my apple. Again, toss away for the edge and start slicing. You don't want to skin the apple because that's actually going to give us the effect of the red rose later on. Again, nice and thin pieces, making sure they are very, very thin, hence the sharp knife. If I'm correct, Michelle will probably edit this out so you don't sit here and watch me cut apples all night, because she will be editing this video later. And if she doesn't edit this part out, well, you guys can sit here and watch me to make sure I don't cut myself. Again, nice and careful with your apple slices. If you're worried they're a bit too thick, that's fine. I mean, that's how we learn. Going in to cut my second apple. Again, I'm not sure how many these are going to make. I'm going to just place them once you're done onto a plate, but I'm going to do that in a little bit. Again, I've got my apple. There we go, cutting away my throwaway and back into thin slices. These thin slices aren't actually that hard to do now that I'm doing them myself. But again, if you have one of those slicers or maybe even a cheese grater that might work, give it a shot because that might make this project a little bit easier and or make the apples all the same. You know, if I could get paid to just cook all day, I think I would. I have now been cooking a lot since I had a kiddo come into my home. So I feel like I'm constantly baking, constantly cooking, and constantly eating. And that's my favorite part. But if I could get paid to do the cooking part, I probably would enjoy it just as much. If you're a kiddo watching this and your mom makes you food from scratch, appreciate it. And if your mom doesn't make food from scratch, appreciate her even more because it means she doesn't have time and she's still putting dinner on your table. All right, last half of the apple. Even though I do have 3 more apples here, I could make a ton, but I don't want to make too much because I don't know how many these apples are going to make. So far, I've made quite a few slices. And we're just going to see how this goes. Going a little bit faster now, so I'm getting used to being able to cut this thin. Still not as consistent as I'd like them to be in terms of size, but they're all rather thin, and that's all we need. Again, I'm getting to the part of the apple where I don't have much to grip. So if you are getting to that part and you're worried about safety and cutting yourself, go ahead and throw that other part of the apple away, especially if you have extra apples to deal with. Okay, so I've got my throwaways and I've got my apples here. Now, to get rid of the seeds and the core, okay, all you're actually going to do is take a spoon and you're just going to use the round part to cut out that core. If you have a cookie cutter that's a circle, that will also work. So you're just cutting out the core on each of these. You don't have to do this step. Cores or apples are actually meant for you to be able to eat the entire thing. But, you know, it's really up to you whether or not you want to core your apples. If you're someone who wants to core your apples first, that's not necessarily something that is in any particular order. but this is just the way the instructions made them for me. So I wanted to make sure I followed the instructions to a T, and then we can learn going from there to either follow or not follow these instructions. Actually, this one doesn't even have any core in it, so I'm actually going to go ahead and leave that alone. Quite a few of these don't have cores, which is strange. Be careful when you're cutting your core apples, because if they're too thin, some of them may break. And that just becomes a lovely little snack for you while you're cooking. My son gets mad at me when I eat while cooking dinner, because he says I get first dibs of all the best stuff. I call it the throwaways, so we disagree on that, but all right, I'm trucking along here, going ahead and getting rid of the core. Actually, I'm finding that this coring part is actually more difficult than the cutting part was. I'm going to see if I can cut quite a few of them all at once. Of course, like I said, you want to make sure that you are cutting them nice and thin. So because I made mine nice and thin, I have just a lot of excess here. And cutting them like that with a knife isn't working. So I'm going to go ahead and try the spoon again. I did a stack of them. Definitely not perfect. I think I like doing it one by one, because the top ones definitely cored okay, but the bottom ones split. So I'm going to go back to doing it single file. And that is okay. All right, here we go. I am almost done cutting my apples. I'm going to be putting these on the plate in as single of a layer as possible, because you'll see why in a moment, but we're going to soften these apples. And in order to soften them, you want to try them to have them on a single layer on your plate. I feel like I should show you the single layer, but I'm also worried that it will tip over when I show this to you, but I guess there you go. Okay, so I'm putting them on as much of a single layer as possible on the plate, still cutting away my centers. If you're one of my kiddos, hi, I miss you, and I can't wait till we're back in person so I can see you again. If you're new to the church, a new kiddo to the church, hi, I used to be one of the teachers in Sunday school. I'm not anymore because I have my own kid who's 17. He's old, but he demanded a lot of my time, and then COVID happened. So that was real fun. We did still manage to do a, Agape managed to do a Jacqueline Spectacular event, which was fun. I was also in charge of that one for Agape, and we had a bingo. So I made a bingo card, and then you could make your own bingos. And then within that bingo, it was things like someone asks to go to the bathroom, or someone sings a Christmas carol, or someone asks mommy for popcorn, or someone spills the popcorn. Yes, I know that some of my kids would totally spill the popcorn if they were in a car watching the Jacqueline Spectacular. You hear the ha-ha song. If you ever go to the Jacqueline Spectacular, they actually have this song that Miss Christine finds incredibly annoying, but it's just goes ha the whole time, and it's so annoying. I hate it, but I put it on the bingo card. Every one of my kiddos at church knows I hate the ha-ha song. All right, I'm almost done with all of my apples, coring them. Some of these came out really cool because the seeds fell out and they have this cute little design. Too bad I have to put that away. All right, I'm cutting away all the cores. I've got 5 slices left. Here we go. I think this is going to make a lot of roses. That's what we're making. But I am not sure. So we will see what happens. Okay. Now that you have all of your apples cored and put on as much of a single layer as possible onto a plate, you're actually going to take this plate of cored apples, and you're going to put it in the microwave for 45 seconds. You want to see if they're floppy after the 45 seconds, and if not, throw them in for like another 10 seconds. All right, 45 seconds. While I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my area because I am going to need room for my puffs. All right, so I'm going to throw away my ends unless you have anyone in your family who would like to eat them. For example, my mother really likes to eat odds and ends, but she is not here. Go ahead and throw that away. All right. Just gonna clear this off. I do want to keep the knife because I'm going to need it one more time. Oh, and there's the oven. I'm gonna check on my apples to see if they're floppy. I think they can go in for another 10 to 20 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them in there for another 20 seconds. And then we shall see. I'm going to go ahead and use the rag that I told you to have on by to go ahead and wipe down my counter, but you will need that for something else. So don't get it too dirty. We're about time to use the plastic wrap and the rag. While we're waiting for that, we are going to go ahead and open our dough. What I will say here is that if you have flour, to put it on your surface. If you don't have flour, that's okay. All right, so you don't want to cook your apples too much because they are also going to cook in the oven, okay? Ooh, hot. So you want to make them nice and floppy. See how they're drooping a little bit? This is just so that they don't crack later on in the recipe, okay? All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take some saran wrap. And this is just so while we're working with the dough, the apples can get even more soggy. So I'm going to put the wrap over the plate just like this. And then to trap all of that in there, I'm going to take my lovely snowman dish towel and I'm just going to put it over and put my apples to the top. All right, the next part, like I said, if you have flour, it is okay to sprinkle a little bit on your workspace. If you don't have flour, it is not a big deal. You just want to make sure you're not pressing down too hard on the dough, otherwise it will stick onto the surface. All right, time to open these canisters. I love opening these. Oh, that's my oven telling me it's preheated. I love opening these. I don't really know why, but just like pulling them and then a little pop that used to always scare me with the kids. It didn't pop, so gotta hit it against the counter. Boom, now it's popped. All right, here we go. And the dough is out. Awesome. I wish I could like kind of, oh, I guess I can point it down a little bit. We're done with this, so we no longer need that. All right, so you're gonna go ahead and unroll your dough. You will have a seam, find it very carefully, and you're going to unroll it. All right, this is the sticky part, okay? All right, now you have a long way. This is the long way, and you have a short way, okay? You're actually gonna cut this way, okay? Horizontally or vertically, whichever one you want to call it. It's vertical in my vision, it's horizontal in yours. But all right, so we're going to cut this and we want them to be about 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to take my knife from earlier and I'm like, ooh, 3 inches. Yeah, that's about there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. Like I said, the directions say that with 2 apples, you're going to make about 4. So I'm going to go ahead and aim for 4. This does not have to be perfect. Oh, it looks like I'm going to have enough for 5. Or this one's kind of not completely 3 inches. So I'm just going to set that aside. I can use my dough roller later if I want to try. but it should look like this, okay? Got about 3 inches wide, and you've got your the rest of your dough. Okay, so what's going to happen next? We've covered our apples, we've done this. This is where you're going to take your butter, okay? So I've got my butter. I've melted it before this so that you guys weren't waiting too long. And I'm going to take the butter and I'm actually going to just brush it on. If you have a brush, use a brush. If you don't have a brush, you can use your fingers. Just make sure that you don't use boiling hot butter because then you will burn yourself. Okay, so I'm going to only do one at a time because I want the butter to remain nice and wet. I am going to grab a container to put my cinnamon sugar in. If you don't have cinnamon sugar, you can definitely make your own with sugar and cinnamon and just mix it into a pot. I prefer to buy cinnamon sugar myself because I use it in everything. I use it in my hot cocoa. I use it in apple pies. I just use it all the time. So I love to have cinnamon sugar in the house. So I'm going to take my cinnamon sugar and I'm going to just put that on however much you like. If you really like sweet things, you're going to want a lot. If you don't like sweet things, maybe a little bit less. I'm going to try and distribute that as evenly as possible. I'm using my fingers because the container I have had really big holes and just made the cinnamon sugar go everywhere. But I'm going to put as much cinnamon on here as I can. Okay, great. I think I've got enough on it. If you want to go ahead and see, I will show you. I've got quite a bit on there. Now comes the part that's a little bit trickier, okay? So we are going to now take our apples. The plate is still a little hot, so please be careful. And so they're browning up a little bit, which I think is showing me that they are getting a little soft, okay? So that is a good sign, okay? All right, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our apples, okay? And we're going to put it halfway. I think I'm going to roll it out a bit, actually. A little shorter than I expected it to be. So I've got a roller. I'm just going to roll it out a little bit. This is me kind of playing it by ear, only because I've made rolls of roses before, and they were always a little longer. So I'm just going to roll this out just a smidge more because I know what the length is supposed to be. Because I make these potato rolls, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting full rolls. All right, so I rolled that out a little bit. It's a little longer now. It's about this long now, okay? And I'm going to place, actually, I show you here, I'm going to place the apple halfway so that it's a little above the dough, okay? And that there's half this, okay? I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to stop when I get about here because I do need some of the dough to not have apples on it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You want to try and overlap your apples. Okay, so sorry for the close-in again. Here we go. So just like this, you make it all the way. You're going to overlap a little bit and leave a little bit of room there. Okay, and then you're going to take the other half and you're going to fold it up. I'll show you in a moment, but right now I do need both hands. So I'm going to fold up my dough. So it's kind of like I'm tucking the apples into that. Okay, so I've folded up my dough. I'm tucking my apples into them. All right, this is where you're going to need the egg that I gave you in the kit. Okay, we are going to make an egg wash. So 1 egg, a tiny little bowl. Go ahead and open that egg. And you're going to need 1 tablespoon of water. Now, when I bake, I don't use, I don't like to eyeball it because personally, I do that when I'm cooking and it works, but baking is like a science. So please, please, please. All right, so I've got my measuring cup and I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of water into the egg wash. And then I'm going to beat it with a fork. There's a couple of other ways to make egg wash depending on how you like it. You can make it with the same amount of 1 tablespoon of milk or a tablespoon of heavy cream. It's really your choice. And then you're just going to squish it all in there. Okay, I'm going to use the same brush as my butter brush because I do that quite often, but you're going to egg wash the outside of this lovely little tucked in apples. Okay, and then you're going to pour more cinnamon sugar on it. Of course, just not from a brush. All right, so I'm going to pour some more cinnamon sugar on my apples. I am putting a little bit on top of the apples too. And this is going to end up being the inside of my pastry once I roll it up. All right, so your finished product should look like this. You've got your apples, you've got a little bit of room here with no apples, and you got your cinnamon sugar. All right, here is the hard part. Here's the hard part. We're actually now going to roll up our apples, okay, and put them in the dish that we made already. Okay, rolling up our apples and then putting it in the dish we made already. It's still a little bit of egg on the counter, and I don't want it to get all sticky, so I'm just gonna clean that up. All right. All right, so this is the part where I'm kind of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but here we go. The end that you left a little bit of room on, that's going to be the finished end. So don't start with that part. Start with the part that does have no space. Okay, and you're going to roll it up. Be careful. Oh, it's already looking so cute. Rolling, rolling, rolling. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing. But here we go, I'm at the end and I'm going to kind of seal that off. And if done correctly, it should look like a rose. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in my pan. It fit just right in the pan. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and repeat that same step with all of these now at once. And now if Michelle is again editing this, I'm sure she's going to fast forward this a little bit so you don't have to watch. But if you are doing it alongside with me and she didn't edit it, well, then we can just sit here and watch me make some more of these lovely apple roses. All right, so again, you're going to roll them out and you have at least 3 by wide. It doesn't really matter how long. The longer it is, the bigger your rose is going to be. Okay, all right, then we are going to butter. I'm going to use my fingers this time because I put my egg in that one already and I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to rub butter on each of these. Beautiful. Remember, please do not use super hot butter. I don't want anyone to burn themselves. I'm buttering the remaining 3 pastry puffs that I have here. Awesome sauce. And then, of course, our cinnamon sugar. Once again, if you like cinnamon sugar, you want to put a lot of it in there. Okay, here we go. Putting on that cinnamon sugar. I love cinnamon sugar, so I'm just gonna be very, very free and loving with my cinnamon sugar, like I am with life. Yes, YOLO, right? Gotta get all that cinnamon sugar in there. Yummy, it smells so good already. All right. Here we go. Almost done with this step of cinnamon sugar once again. I imagine that you could again just make this cinnamon if you didn't want all the sugar, but it would have a bit of a bitter taste to it instead of the sugar and cinnamon. But again, if you don't have cinnamon sugar, of course you can make your own with your own combo of cinnamon and sugar. Maybe putting less sugar if you're trying to be more on the healthier side, but let's be honest, if you're eating a pastry like this, you're not doing it to be healthy. All right, I put my butter, I put my cinnamon, now I need to finish putting on my apples. Remember, leave a small bit at the end there to make sure that I have something for it to stick to, keeping it half for the fold up portion. Oh my God, it smells just like apple pie. That's a really good one. There's a little bit of cinnamon sugar on my hands. Oh my god. Already tastes so good. Maybe I should have just made apples with cinnamon sugar for our treat today. Probably would have had a lot of fun with that. All right, I'm on my third one. Ooh, my third one is a rather long piece of dough. So I'm just gonna keep on going. Again, leaving a little bit of space at the end. Okay, I'm gonna do one more zoom in for you. And I have all three of these. Okay, you got my apples, you got a little half, and then a little room at the end here. All right. For those of you who remember Miss Casey, I borrowed her tripod for this, so you can thank Miss Casey for that as well. All right, we're gonna go ahead and tuck our apples into bed, folding up that half of the dough that we left uncovered, folding it up to a nice little blanket. All right, we're gonna do that 2 more times, making sure some of our apples are still visible because that's what the rose is gonna be. I would say 3 inches is almost a little too much. I would say even 2 inches would have been fine. But this is our first time doing it, so I highly recommend following instructions when it's your first time. But I don't think 3 inches is necessary. All right, here we go. Then again, finally our egg wash and a little bit more sugar before we roll. The egg wash is really there to make it nice and brown. If there were a way to egg wash it on the outside as well, I would definitely try, but this is, once it's together, it's very fragile. So it would be rather hard that way. Here we go. Still going. Okay. All right, now our final layer of cinnamon sugar. Final layer, yum, yum, yum. It is looking delicious. Okay. Last round of cinnamon sugar. Well, almost last round of cinnamon sugar. All right, here we go. I actually still have some apples left. I did grab an extra pastry because I messed this first batch up. So I do have some extra pastry if I want to make more of these, which I probably am because I cut the apples, so I might as well. All right, remember we're starting where we didn't leave room, and that's where we're going to go ahead and roll. If you did your apples correctly in the microwave, they will not crack. And then nice and sealed for a rose. So I had to put that in there. Again, rolling it nice on up. Using that end with no things to seal it. And then this is my really, really long one, so I'm a little nervous about this one. I don't know how it got so long. Here we are. There we go. Final rose. All right. So the directions say that this is an optional step, that you can actually put a little bit of cinnamon sugar on top. I still have some in my dish, so I am actually going to just sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon sugar right on top of my rolled roses. Awesome. Okay. So this is about the time that I leave you. So what's going to happen is you're going to take these new lovely roses that you made, and you're going to put them in the oven at 400 degrees for 45 minutes. They should get nice and golden brown, and they should be wonderful. If you did order a kit, I included powdered sugar for you. Okay. This was also listed as optional on the recipe. Once it's baked, you let it sit for 10 minutes, and you can powder this right on top. It was listed as optional, and the only reason the gentleman used it was because there's a statistic that if you put powdered sugar on your dessert when you're done baking it, that it has like 50% more likely chance to get reposted. So I don't think this is necessary, but if you like powdered sugar, I always have it in the house because I'm constantly making dough boys. And by that, I mean I have my best friend make dough boys for me all the time. So if you have it, feel free to use it. If you don't worry about buying it. You can just put a little bit more cinnamon sugar on it in the end. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the oven for 45 minutes, and I'll post a picture of the finished product in our Beneficent Family chat group, and I'll send one to Michelle so that when she posts this video, you can see the end product. I hope you liked it, and if you have a special someone that you want to make this for Valentine's Day for, I'm sure your partner will love it, or that special young boy or girl in your life, or that special person that took care of you for your entire life. Moms love this kind of stuff. Dads love eating this kind of stuff. So make something for your loved one, no matter who that loved one is, and happy Valentine's Day, guys.